Welcome back to Management 2020. In this video, we'll take a look at presentation organization and some strategies for preparing your presentation. So we'll look at some cognate strategies that are helpful in understanding what your message is and how your message applies to your audience. And then we'll talk about kind of defining your message to make sure that your message matches your goals and your audience needs. And lastly, we'll talk about ways to structure and organize your presentation. So you may be familiar with these words, logos, pathos, and ethos. If you've ever taken um, a first-year writing course, for instance, the instructor may have talked about rhetorical triangle, the rhetorical context, and the idea that logos, pathos, and ethos are three traditionally Greek categories of appeals that speakers or communicators can make to their audience. And by using these different appeals or categories of appeals, speakers and presenters are able to connect with their audience and help their audience connect with the message. So traditionally, logos is associated with things like logical argumentation. Pathos is associated with emotional appeals, stories, humor, using emotional expression to get the audience interested in the topic. And ethos are appeals to authority, so maybe the trustworthiness of the presenter and their status in society. So more modern theorists have added additional clarity or strategies to help describe these different types of appeals. So clarity, concision, and arrangement could fit under this idea of logical appeals. And so in business communication, we know that we want to make sure our messages are clear, that we have a clear purpose and it's communicated to our audience. But that we also communicate that message as concisely as possible, meaning that we use few words to express idea, as few words as possible. And then the arrangement of the ideas. Have we ordered our ideas in a logical organization that the audience can easily understand our ideas? So these principles of business communication, which we have talked about throughout the course, are definitely ways to appeal to logos. You know, that our audience wants good, clear arguments, good, clear presentations. They want them concisely and organized in meaningful ways. But we can also then think about how our business communication could appeal to pathos. And part of that is by paying attention to our tone. Do we have an appropriate tone for the context and for our audience and for our message? Are we too familiar? Are we too formal? Ideally, our audience won't even notice our tone because we're using a tone that is so appropriate for the context that they will just naturally accept the tone and not question it. But when our tone is off, it draws the audience's attention to the tone because there's something about the tone that doesn't feel appropriate. So using tone appropriately can be an appeal to pathos. Also, emphasis. Where do we draw the audience's emphasis within our message by highlighting aspects of our message? This can be an appeal to pathos because we're helping them maybe by providing maybe some stories or examples that have more of an emotional impact. And then lastly, the idea of engagement. What about our content or our organization or our delivery that draws the audience attention to our message, that makes them feel invested and interested in it? And that can often be an emotional experience that they want to know more and they want to continue engaging with our message. Then lastly, when we get to ethos, this idea of the credibility of the presenter or the communicator. Do we have the credentials that would make someone trust us? Are we presenting the information in a way that meets their expectations? They expect this kind of information and it's organized according to pre-established patterns. It fits in their expectations of what is trustworthy. And if necessary, do we make reference to outside information to help build our argument or our trustworthiness? And this can come in the form of references and citations. So These more traditional appeals of logos, pathos, and ethos can be considered within this framework of very contemporary and practical aspects of business writing. So as we craft our message for our presentation, it's important to first to think about what the topic is. And most often the topic is assigned to us by someone. We know we have to present at the next, meeting about this topic. Or I'm going to go to a conference and I know what the topic of the conference is, so I need to prepare a message related to that topic. But we generally have more control over than the purpose and maybe the thesis or the purpose statement. So we need to be thinking about, why am I presenting on this topic? What is it that the audience knows? What is it the audience needs to know? And what is it that I know that I can help them learn or share or teach or persuade them about this thing that they need to know or they want to know? So considering our knowledge and experience, considering our audience's knowledge and experience, and then we can figure out what the purpose is. What is it that we want the audience to be able to understand or do, or at the end of that presentation or at the end of the message? And that will help us define our purpose. And as we keep that purpose in mind, then as we craft our message, we're always making sure that the information we're sharing matches that purpose. If we're sharing information and it doesn't lead to that purpose, it's probably a good idea to leave it out of the presentation. So knowing our purpose then helps us figure out what the thesis is. And when we're doing a persuasive presentation, a thesis is the statement or the concept that we want the audience to believe or accept at the end of the message. If we're doing a more informational presentation, maybe we don't necessarily use the word thesis statement, but it's still kind of the driving or the controlling idea of the presentation. We want to make sure that the information we're providing matches that main idea. So as we think about structuring our presentation or our message, there's two ways to think about that. And the first one is the overall structure. Is it appropriate to do something like a chronological organization where we're telling a story? Or do we want to do something where we're evaluating advantages and disadvantages, kind of a compare and contrast? Or is it a cause and effect, right? We want to explain this negative effect that's here and explain where it came from. Or a problem and solution. Talk about a problem and evaluate potential solutions to that problem. So there's many different ways that we could structure our message. And as we think about what is appropriate for the message we want to share, what is our audience familiar with, and what are they expecting, so that we can choose an appropriate overall structure. Now, even if we've chosen that overall structure or a combination of overall structures that work for our topic and our message, we also want to consider internal structure. And we've talked about this before in the course, but the idea of transitions, the idea of summary statements and preview statements, roadmaps within our message can help guide the audience through the message to make sure that not only are they understanding the overall structure, but they're seeing how the components of our message all relate back to our main purpose or our thesis statement. So as we construct our message, we need to be asking ourselves, why is this here? Why does it matter? Is it in the right place within the message or the presentation? And if we can't justify its presence or its organization, then we either need to move it or delete it. So in this video, we talked about connecting maybe modern values for business writing to these more ancient Greek appeals to rhetoric. And then we talked about clearly defining our message and making sure that the structure of our presentation matches our overall goal and our main purpose.